I'm not standing because all of my slides have my speaking notes, just like in my last session. So I like doing that because maybe I mumble or I talk too quickly. You can go back and find my notes and figure out what I was trying to actually say. I'll have it online. My website's gaitherdiamond.com. I'll have it up there. I'm also recording this session so that I can post it later for anybody to look at. And then that's about it. We're going to get started. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad you're here. Today, I want to explore 3 forces that shape almost every housing outcome in America: race, rent, and power. My goal isn't to drown you in data or tell you something brand new. It's to take what you already know, connect the dots, and make it simple enough to investigate, act on, and share. By the end, I'll show you a live racial equity dashboard that makes these patterns visible, because once you can see inequity clearly, you can't unsee it. And that's where change starts. So here's where we're headed. We'll start with a little background about who I am and how I got here, then move into what racial equity really means and why rent and power are so tightly linked. After that, we'll look at how data helps us separate what's true from what's assumed, and how visualization transforms that truth into something anyone can understand. Then we'll bring it all together in a demo of the community equity dashboard that I built for PCHO that has actual live data in it. And then we'll wrap it up with questions and thoughts. Before we can talk about housing or data, we need a shared understanding of equity. Equality says, give everyone the same rules. Equity says, make sure the rules work the same for everyone. And that's a big difference. Housing inequity isn't random. It's the legacy of policies that privileged stability for some and made it optional for others. But inequity leaves a trail. It's measurable. And that means we can visualize it, test it, and if we're willing to face it honestly, fix it. I didn't start my career in housing or even data. I actually started in radio. I did 20 years of radio, and it taught me more about systems than I ever expected. Every audience rating, every playlist, every marketing budget, it was all data feedback. When I started studying business intelligence, I realized it was the same logic on a bigger scale. You can't fix what you don't measure. Measurement's key. And you can't measure what you don't define. So definitions are very important. That idea, that clarity, drives improvement. It's what I carried with me when I moved into the housing and homelessness field. When I made that shift, I started as a data analyst and later became a chief technology officer for a continuum of care. Eventually, I launched Gaither Dynamic, building dashboards for more than 60 communities across the country. But this work isn't abstract for me, it's personal. That's my son in the photo. He's experiencing homelessness right now in Los Angeles. So when I talk about data, I'm not talking about numbers on a screen. I'm talking about people like him, people who deserve systems that actually work. This photo was taken from one of my first teams at the Charlotte County Homeless Coalition in Southwest Florida, where I flew up from to freeze. When I look at it though, I'm reminded that behind every number we'll talk about today are faces like these: colleagues, neighbors, families trying to help families. These aren't abstract metrics, they're lives. That's why accuracy and integrity in data matter so much, because when we get the data wrong, it's not just a bad report. Real people pay the price. This is from a few years later, serving on the board of the very same organization I had started out as a data analyst. And it taught me something simple but powerful. Systems don't change in silos. Data scientists can't do it alone. Neither can policymakers or frontline staff. Real progress happens when everyone starts speaking the same language and moving in the same direction. That's what equity really is, alignment. It's everyone rowing the same boat instead of arguing about who gets the oars. For me, this slide sums it all up. Data, systems, and dignity are inseparable. Every number you'll see today represents a person. Every data set is a story about whether that person found stability or slipped through the cracks. When we treat data as compliance, we reduce people to counts. But when we treat data as a mirror, a way to reflect what's really happening, we build trust, we learn faster, and we actually help people. That's why this work matters. Before we get too deep, I want to set expectations. I'm not here to necessarily tell you something you don't know. Maybe I will. I just want to make sure that what we have is compact enough for us to investigate, act on, and share out. So you might see stuff up here that you've already seen 1,000 times, but maybe it's in a format that's easier for you to distribute. So when I say race, rent, and power, I'm talking about 3 threads woven through every housing outcome, with race determining who's invited or excluded, rent being the toll we pay to stay included, and power decides who sets that toll and who collects it. They don't act separately, they write the script together, and that script decides who thrives, who struggles, and who gets left out. Before we dive into history, let's start with something visual. Equality gives everyone the same thing. Equity gives people what they actually need. In this image, everyone gets a sidewalk, but only one person can really move forward easily on it. The difference isn't about effort, it's about design. Housing programs often make the same mistake. We use the same process for every single person, then call the results fair. But fairness isn't about sameness. It's about removing the barriers that were built unevenly to begin with. Here's that same lesson in another form. Everyone gets a bike, but not everyone can ride it. This is what happens when policy is built for the average person. The average person doesn't exist. Equity is about fit, designing systems that meet people where they actually are, so everyone has a real chance to move forward. When we get the fit wrong, we don't close gaps, we reinforce them. This image takes it a step further. Equality gives us everyone the same box to stand on. Equity gives people what they actually need to see the game. In housing, that might look like targeted rent relief, fair chance screening, or voucher protections, policies that lift those blocked by taller fences. It's not favoritism, it's fixing sightlines. When we pretend everyone's view is equal to begin with, some people are left staring at the fence forever. This version adds the truth panel, reality. Even when we build boxes or programs, some still can't reach the view while others tower above it. Reality is where we live, a mix of privilege, pressure, and policy. It reminds us that good intentions don't cancel old math. We can't close racial rent gaps with programs that only paper over structural costs. Reality is the part of the fence we still pretend isn't there. This final frame shows what we're all working toward, liberation. In the first 3 scenes, we're still managing imbalance, building boxes, adjusting height, trying to make sure the game is visible. Liberation is when the entire fence is redesigned or removed because it's no longer needed. It's when fairness isn't an afterthought policy, but the default condition of the system. That's the dream for housing. A market and a culture where affordability, access, and respect don't depend on constant correction. Equity is the bridge we build. Liberation is the point when everyone can cross without it. Now that we've talked about equity and what fairness should look like, let's talk about how we got so far from it in housing. In the 1930s, the Federal Housing Authority ensured low down payment mortgages for millions of white families, but excluded black families through redlining. Redlining is the act of refusing a loan or insurance to someone because they live in an area deemed to be a poor financial risk. In the 1940s, the GI Bill promised opportunity, but upheld racially restrictive covenants, denying black veterans access to those loans. By the 1950s, urban renewal cleared entire black neighborhoods for highways and civic projects. Each policy reinforced the next: exclusion, confinement, displacement. The result was not just segregation, it was stolen opportunity, and the start of a rent-based system where ownership for some meant dependency for others. In 1968, the Fair Housing Act banned racially restricted deeds, a huge step, but it didn't stop exclusion. Cities simply swapped racial language for economic zoning. Multifamily units were zoned out, lot size minimums priced out lower income families, and mortgage access remained tilted. In effect, the law stopped saying you can't live here, but it didn't change the systems making that true. That's why racial segregation remained baked into our housing map long after the ink on that law still waiting to dry, or had dried rather. So by the 70s, policymakers tried to repair decades of redlining with the Community Reinvestment Act. It asked banks to lend fairly in all neighborhoods. But here's the problem. The same institutions that created red lines were now grading their own homework. Black borrowers were still targeted with predatory loans, inflated interest rates, and refinance scams. The law's spirit was equity, but the practice remained extraction. If redlining said you can't have credit, predatory lending said you can, but it'll cost you more. From the 1980s through the Great Recession, racial parity in housing remained elusive. Subprime lenders preyed on Black and Latino homeowners, steering them into high-risk loans even when they qualified for better ones. When the crash hit, those families lost homes. And the wealth that should have built stability for the next generation. But investors then bought those foreclosures and turned them into rentals, raising prices for everyone. That's how we went from an ownership gap to a rent trap. When we talk about affordability today, this is what we're really measuring. The cost of yesterday's policy still collecting interest today. So, COVID didn't create inequality, but it made it impossible to ignore. What changed in the 2020s wasn't just exposure, but accountability. For the first time, we saw eviction moratoriums, rent relief dashboards, and equity goals baked into funding decisions. Data became part of the response, not just the diagnosis. This decade marks the moment when equity stopped being an aspiration and started being measured, like finally. So here's what that history leaves us with today. More than half of Black renters and over half of Latino renters spend at least 30% of their income on rent. For white renters, it's only about 42%. That difference might sound small, but it's what separates stability from stress. It means fewer savings, fewer choices, and less protection when something goes wrong. Rent isn't just a payment, it's a pressure valve that determines who stays secure and who stays scared. When rent keeps rising faster than wages, it's not just expensive, it's exclusion reinvented. Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you explain that slide again? So white renters, 42% of them pay more than 30% of their income?
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure.
And so, but it's higher for the Black renters pay, so 58% of Black renters pay that. So that's a 16% gap right there,
I pay more than 30% of their income.
Exactly, yeah. So a higher percentage. You're paying 30% is not always, that's not, people say a 30-year rent or a 30-year income for rent, but when you're disproportionately doing it for races, it becomes a problem. So when we trace this line out, we see the real story. The same neighborhoods redlined 80 years ago are still the ones with the highest eviction rates and the greatest homelessness today. That's not coincidence, it's continuity. Rent pressure pushes families to the edge. Eviction delivers the shove, and the system measures it only when it becomes homelessness. But if we wait until someone loses everything to intervene, we've already failed. Preventing homelessness starts with stabilizing rent and dismantling the barriers that make stability uneven in the first place. So everything we've talked about so far, the history, the policy shifts, the inequities that ripple forward, they all leave a fingerprint in the data. The dashboard I'll show you later makes those fingerprints visible. It breaks down homelessness, housing rates, chronic homelessness, children in crisis, and returns to homelessness, all side by race. And then you can explore who's entering the system, who's being housed, and who's coming back a little bit better. It's not about numbers for numbers' sake, it's about accountability. Because when we can see disparity in real time, we can stop debating if it exists and start asking the only question that matters. What are we going to do about it? Data is how we hold systems accountable. Not people, systems. It takes lived experience and turns it into something measurable. When we talk about race and housing, data becomes our mirror. It shows how bias behaves when it's scaled up. Who's getting housed faster? Who's waiting longer? Who's returning? Done right, data turns compassion into evidence and keeps equity work from running on opinion instead of proof. When we fail to count people accurately, we fail to serve them effectively. Every system starts as a story. Who deserves help? Who's earned stability? Who hasn't? When those stories aren't measured, they harden into policy. That's how inequity becomes infrastructure. Invisible but permanent. The beauty of data is that it helps us unearth those buried stories and see the consequences clearly. When we count everyone, we serve everyone. Data tests the stories we tell ourselves. It connects compassion to accountability and helps us move from I think to we know, especially in homelessness work. The same racial patterns repeat no matter the city, shorter housing stays for some, longer wait times for others. And when the pattern repeats across geography, it's not a coincidence, it's design. Data exposes design. Before we get into the weeds, this slide sets our shared language. Tables, rows, columns. They sound dry, but they're how we make human stories readable. When a field like race or exit destination disappears, so does part of the truth. Clean, defined data isn't just technical hygiene, it's the foundation of fairness. This is where structure meets story. Each row represents a household, and every blank cell is a missing detail in someone's life. When data is messy, policies are misinformed. When it's consistent, it earns trust. The more disciplined our structure, the clearer the human truth becomes. And that's how good data becomes good policy. A row is one record, one person, household, or event. Think of it as a single thread in the larger fabric. When rows are accurate, the patterns we see at the system level are reliable. If they're wrong, the whole picture shifts. A row might seem simple, but it's a single life event captured in time. If rows are inaccurate, the system's reflection distorts. Think about how a single typo in an income field can shift someone from housed to ineligible. Each row is a small act of representation. Get it right and the full picture becomes honest. Columns decide what we care about. If a system doesn't track race, equity becomes invisible. If it doesn't track where people exit, we can't measure stability. Data fields are moral decisions disguised as spreadsheets. What we choose to measure tells the world what we've decided matters. A field value is the detail inside a cell. It may look small, a date, a number, but across thousands of records, values expose patterns, who's most at risk, what exits stick, what pressures are rising. Tiny details become big insights. Identifiers connect a person's journey across projects and time. Without them, people vanish between programs. With them, their full story emerges. But they're powerful and dangerous if mishandled. The ability to track someone's progress must come with a discipline to protect them from exposure. Data stewardship is equity work. Now, I have some slides in here. I'm going to go ahead and skip these because we started a little late. They're all here, but they have, let's see. It talks about personally identifiable information, so PII, and how to protect that in the system. It's a little technical, but like I said, it's in the slide deck. I'll share that with everybody, and it'll be in the notes are all the things I was going to talk about them, so you'll get the full effect. So that PII, it's very important stuff, but it can be a little dry. Okay. We've talked about what data is and how it's built, but structure means nothing if it doesn't lead to meaning. Visualization and dashboards are how we translate data into something human. When we apply these tools to equity work, they expose where access breaks down, who's moving through the housing system, and who's getting stuck. This is how numbers become accountability, not just analysis. Dashboards like this one turn static reports into living mirrors. In homelessness and housing, they let you see what's happening now, not just last year. Every color and shape on this dashboard is a window into equity, who's being served, who isn't, and where resources are unevenly distributed. These visuals help communities respond faster and more fairly. Just curious, how many people use some sort of dashboard in their organization? Just any kind of dashboard. That's pretty good. And I mean, honestly, people say, well, I tell them I build data dashboards. What's a dashboard? Same thing you get in your car. It just gives you information about your current events and what's actually happening. That's the basic of a dashboard right there. I apologize for this next section. I love it. I hope other people do. I think it's interesting.
Can you walk us just through like one of those just so that I'm making sure?
Oh, we're going through this whole thing.
Oh, okay.
This is all part, I have a demo, you guys can demo it and everything. I've got a link to it, you can check it all out. Yeah, we'll cover it. Okay, sometimes numbers look clear until you really look. Anscombe's quartet is a classic example of why averages lie. 4 data sets, all with identical summary stats. Same means, same correlations, yet completely different shapes once graphed. It's a reminder that surface level success metrics, like overall housing rates, can hide racial disparities underneath. So looking at only tables, all 4 data sets appear identical. When I see a table like this, I mean, I try to look at the numbers, I'm a smart guy, but I'm usually like, let me visualize it, I don't know, help me out here. And you get them so big, you can't even process them. Now, many communities read their data at the spreadsheet level. Everything looks fine, it's just some numbers. But hidden in those numbers might be the same story. White households housed faster, black households waiting longer. Without visualization, inequity hides behind averages. Here's the trap of summary stats. They look perfectly balanced until you realize they're not. We do the same thing with housing reports. We publish averages that make outcomes look equitable when they aren't. Data without visualization, unfortunately, can give us comfort, but not always clarity. And equity work depends on clarity. So now look what happens when we graph the same data. One data set has a straight line. Another curves. One's dominated by an outlier. In housing terms, that's the difference between everyone's getting housed and everyone except one population. Visualization and data analysis makes inequity visible. It's how we find where the system is breaking down. So the summary statistics, all 4 of these look the exact same. I'd say, oh, the average is this, the correlation is that, and it's like, oh, they're all the same. No, they're not. I mean, just look at those. They're not even close together. But what's great is someone went a little bit further and they created something called data source recs. So these are summary statistics, they're all the exact same, but these graphs all fit those numbers. So that's why the numbers themselves don't tell the real story, because you can't see an outlier of 10,000 or something. So that's why visualizing the data becomes so important. So a chart or map shows patterns. KPIs quantify progress. Dashboards tie them together. In homelessness and housing, these tools show how inflow, exits, and returns differ by race. Who's cycling through, who's stabilizing, and who's falling through cracks we didn't see. When used together, they make equity actionable, not just aspirational. This graph shows inflow and outflow. Who's entering homelessness and who's exiting to housing? When we layer in race, we see something powerful: disparities in speed, stability, and returns. Visualization takes what would be invisible in a report and turns it into an undeniable pattern. It helps leaders ask, who is falling behind and why? Raw data is like this table, technically complete but hard to interpret. You can see the numbers, but the story is buried. That's what homelessness data looks like before visualizations. Lines and columns that don't reveal who's thriving and who's struggling. When we visualize, the story starts to appear. Now we see peaks and valleys, patterns we couldn't spot before. In housing, those peaks are often moments of progress, and the valleys are where racial inequities widen. Visualization is how we stop guessing and start understanding. Once we polish the data into a bar chart, the story becomes obvious. One glance and you can see the difference. Highs, lows, trends. It's the same with homelessness dashboards. We can instantly see which projects, populations, or policies are working and which aren't. Good visuals don't just inform, they compel action. But it's nice, I think, visually to go, oh, apples, oh, bar, and then you can see that's all it is. You're just stacking numbers on top of each other. KPIs, or key performance indicators, are the pulse points of a system. They tell us whether we're moving in the right direction towards stability or away from it. But in homelessness work, KPIs like housing placements, time homelessness, and returns show where equity is succeeding and where it's slipping. But KPIs aren't the story, the full story. They're the heartbeat. You take the pulse, that's okay. You get that one instance. But what was it yesterday? I don't know. I just did it this one time. I just know it right now. Well, data over time lets you know, it's like, was it just low this moment, or have I been at 100 for the last 3 days and just had a low moment because I took a pill? Well, data over time tells a different story. This is where the heartbeat turns into vision. Dashboards combine data and visualization into one living tool. Leaders can see trends, staff can spot bottlenecks, and the public can understand outcomes without translation. Dashboards are what turn transparency into trust, and trust into progress. So there are two kinds of dashboards. It's funny, I build dashboards, and I've done this naturally, but I didn't actually realize that there are two types of dashboards. And when you start thinking about it, it makes a lot of sense. There's an explanatory dashboard, which tells a clear top-level story, like how are we doing, like very, very broad. But exploratory dashboards dig way deeper. It's why are we seeing this? In equity work, we need both. One, to communicate progress to the public. Usually executive leaders like to see more of an explanatory dashboard. But to people that want to look at patterns and actually dive into what the problems are, and the people that are really doing a lot of groundwork, the exploratory dashboards are essential. So here's the explanatory dashboard. And this is actually for the Housing First program at PCHO. And it's just got static numbers. You got the time period, January of 2024 through June of 2025, and then the numbers in that program and some basic information. So it answers one clear question: how are we doing right now? It focuses on the big picture, maybe people housed or exit from homelessness, that kind of thing, key populations served. In equity work, this is how we communicate with clarity. It tells the story quickly so leaders and funders can focus on solutions instead of searching for data. It's good big picture information. But this one digs deeper. It's built for discovery. You can filter by race, age, population type, or time period. You can explore patterns in chronic homelessness, returns, or child homelessness. Exploratory dashboards turn curiosity into insight. They help practitioners uncover what's driving inequity and where to act next. So this is what exploration looks like in action. You can drill down, compare, and layer different filters. It doesn't tell a single story. it helps you find many stories inside the same data. In housing equity, this matters because disparities don't always appear at the surface. They hide in intersections, race and age, gender and disability, income and access. So what I wanted to do here was pause. Here's a live QR code. If anybody actually wants to go along with me on this, they can. This dashboard, it's going to be, if you're doing your phone, I build mobile versions too. They're not as great as the full desktop, but you can go through here, and I'm going to walk you through this dashboard a little bit. I'll wait for everybody for a minute. Are there any questions so far before I get into the dashboard itself? I'll do another question thing later, but I just want to make sure that there's no. All right, we all ready? And it's real simple. It's gaither.com/equity if you need the actual address. So let me refresh this real quick to make sure it's the newest version. This is built on what's called row level data. Like imagine a spreadsheet that's massive, thousands and thousands of rows. And so what we have is, I'm gonna walk you through the dashboard itself, and then we're gonna see how we interact with it. So initially in the middle, you're going to see the entire system. So this is looking at data from January 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2025. So the center column, almost 3,000 people had been served.
Off the screen.
Oh, did it go away? Oh, what the heck? No, I'm confused. Am I dragging something?
It's like a second screen.
That's what I'm thinking, right? Oh, cool. Okay. I'll get it over there eventually. Oh, wait a minute. I need to mirror this thing. No, I just look behind me. It'll work. We'll make it happen. All right. So, I appreciate that. It's like when you're on a Zoom call or something, and you're talking, and oh, this is great stuff. And like, oh my gosh, it was so good, dude. It's gold. You know, you missed it all. You know. All right, let this load. Okay, so in the center, this is everybody. And if you hover, you're going to get. I like to layer information. So if you hover, you're going to get a lot more details than you ever wanted to know. It's because I'm like that. I also tend to do things, sometimes I'll color code, sometimes, like if I think, you know, like if it's a housing outcome, then that's gonna be green, if it's, you know, but for race and gender colors, I don't pay as much attention to meaning something necessarily, but, so middle of 3,000 people, as we scroll down, this is gonna be for the whole system. So this race area right here, all this is representing all those 3,000 people. And I really wanted people to get an idea of what the community looked like before they started doing any kind of major analysis. So here's our race, gender, which will be updated in the next few weeks to sex, because the federal government has decided that we only have 2 sexes now. We're only going to track them, male and female. So HUD says everybody has to do that. So that'll be no longer gender, it'll be sex because of government.
So what happens to how do you compare data that?
We lose all that. Well, you don't measure, or when you don't measure, it doesn't drive policy. So if you don't collect it, it don't matter anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, we don't care about that anymore. As far as the government's concerned, federal government, you don't track it. If you don't know it's there, it's kind of the same.
Okay.
Yeah. Whether you agree with it or not, it's the way it's going. So age is in the center here. Okay, so now we got that inflow and outflow like I was showing you. And this is cool because I can look at here and I can say, okay, wow, what's a spike doing here? Now, a spike's not always a bad thing. It's just something different. And the thing is, if you're just looking at a bunch of numbers, you don't even know where to start asking questions. But here, I'm asking where the spikes are coming from. And it might be valid. Oh, we closed a project and we just had to, we exited everybody from here and moved them to another one. It's all fine. I said, okay, well, as long as we have an explanation, but first, why? So it's always good to have at least a place to start asking questions. But then as we go down the dashboard, we get things broken out a little bit differently. So now we're actually looking at race. So this is currently, and generally most communities, the top populations are going to be Black, African American, African, and white. So that's what I have it default to because that works for most. But if you want to go up here and you want to change that to another race, they'll show that later. We can definitely do that. So I'm just going to get down. So now we're breaking it out by our two races that we've chosen, and just kind of seeing what the inflow outflow looks like for these races. And now we're going to go down, and again, the center column is the whole system. So we're looking at the homeless rate for basically anyone that came in the doors of PCHO, which is 65.1%. But the rates for the other races, as we can see, are different. There's a 59.7 and a 73.1. So when rates are different, again, like Anson's quartet, they don't always tell the same story. I can tell you, oh my gosh, my school increased population by 100%. We're so happy. Your school only did 10%. Now my school might only have 10 students. And I doubled it to 20, big whoop-de-doo. Another school might have 10,000 students, they added hundreds. So the percentages can lie. There's something in statistics called a z-test analysis. And by doing a z-test analysis, you can bake into the calculation population size to decide whether the population size and the rate together show a disparity. Disparity doesn't always mean bad, it just means a difference to look at. If there is a disparity, that little red indicator up there turns red, otherwise it's gray. So red means, hey, let's investigate a little bit. And so between these two populations, we do have a disparity. There's a difference. Now, a disparity could be as simple as there's a project in one town, or a program in one part of town and not in another, or whatever it might be. It might make sense. But it might be what you think. Some races beat houses a lot higher than others, or not. Or you don't know until you start looking into it. Chronically homeless does the same thing. We can break it apart by race. Children, veterans. And this is interesting. There must have been maybe they had a larger veteran population or something, or the rate. Housed, and then recurrent or returned to homelessness. What's interesting is to see that the disparity, there actually isn't one here. It's pretty interesting. They're pretty aligned. I'll tell you what I see in a lot of communities. A lot of communities have really, they'll have Black African American, very successful. Like it's like they house, all the people, in that category. It's amazing. But then you go down here, and all of a sudden their recurrent rate, their returns to homelessness rate is massive, and you're like, oh, maybe they're not doing the job I thought they were. And a lot of times that can be because one of the exit destinations that you can say that somebody goes to successfully is staying with a friend or family permanently. But nobody checks that. It's not a Section 8, it's not anything that ever gets tracked. It's like, oh no, they're cool, they're gone, they're happy, don't talk to them anymore, they're gone, leave them alone. But then 2 weeks later, they show up at street outreach. And you're like, I don't think that was permanent. 2 weeks is not, I don't think 2 weeks is permanent. Maybe somebody else disagrees with me. And then people are like, well, no, we need to leave it as temporary, or leave it as permanent because that was their intention. I'm like, no, 2 weeks is bad. That housing program is they're getting a better retention rate than they really should. They need to be honest. And if they show up 2 weeks later as unhoused, then that's not a permanent placement, and change it, honestly. Change that to temporary in my book, because you're making the data accurate at that point. But I see that a lot in communities, and it's interesting, I'm not seeing it here really. And then, so the last one's recurring. Okay, so here's where the kind of the power comes into this. Because, okay, this so far looks like maybe explanatory dashboard, with a little juice. It's got some cool, visualizations that we can visually see. Like I just want, whenever I see a spike, I'm like, what's a spike doing here? April 2025, like what happened? I don't know, I'd like to learn. But, okay. On this dashboard up here, you can go to the information tab, and it'll help explain what this dashboard is about more than even probably what I've told you just now. But I really wanted people to not only use the dashboard, but be able to understand it. So it walks through people like system or triage or whatever it might be, and how to use the entire thing is right here. Oh, it's cut off. Oh, right over the size. Oh, by the way, please. I have not had a lot of scrutiny on this dashboard, and I would like to have some scrutiny. If you find anything cut off, anything that doesn't work, let me know personally, and I will take care of this. I built this dashboard, and I love having people vet it and go, oh, this icon doesn't make sense, or whatever it might be. Just email me directly, and I'll work on that, and I would love to have that conversation. So I'm gonna go up here now, and I'm gonna change, I have filters. I can change my dates. One of the things I started doing this a long time ago when I was a data analyst. I would choose 1 month for the same month rather, for like my start and end. And then I would do that just to see like a snapshot. And you get a snapshot of any month this way. So this exploratory dashboard can be converted into an explanatory dashboard just by choosing a particular month.
So like when you see the spikes, you could go to the filter and that would give you the information about this?
Well, this will reduce, so the spikes now will be only, there won't, actually it won't be, you'll see.
Okay.
And so now, see, there's only one spike, because we're only looking at 1 month. We've narrowed it down to 1 month, and now we've got the snapshot of people. The visualizations for time isn't great, because it's 1 month. But now you can look at this one specific month and see what happened. You can do this for a year, but I like the 1 month thing. It's great for almost like a census, or if you have a census, you can compare numbers. It's kind of nice to be able to do that. I'm gonna go back here, I'm gonna put it back. Although I love the fact that they have 8 years of data, that's so cool. Okay, I could do project type. So maybe I just want street outreach. That's not a bad idea. Let's just see what their street outreach is doing. And the beauty of this is anyone can do this. This is on Tableau Public, so anyone can access this dashboard and run these reports outside the system. I mean, when an organization does this, it's a lot of I think a lot of love for the public, because it takes a lot to go, hey, we're doing all this work and we're willing to let you see it and dig through it and whatever. I mean, so it takes a lot for an organization to be this transparent. And so I think it's really incredible to have like 8 years of data just out there. So now we're going through, see what I just did it for, street outreach, right? So now we're just looking at street outreach. And so now this has become a street outreach dashboard, just like that, just by choosing that one project type. And now, again, we know we got these inflow outflows.